All right, guys, sorry, I just wanted to load something up here. Let me start the recording. I know I'm 5 minutes late. All right. I think I got everything all set. All right, welcome to another episode of Crush Live Call-Ins. It's the day before the election, which means that I will either win or lose big money tomorrow. So I am going to keep this live replay up. So normally I will put the live replay on unlisted, and you need to subscribe to the channel in order to get the link, or subscribe to Crush Live Poker in order to watch the show in its entirety after the fact. But of course, we take the best hands, right? And we put them in videos. So you're not really missing anything by not watching live. But this one will go up. So if you ever want to watch the entire show live, what you can do is subscribe to the channel. And then like a day or two beforehand, you can go to the Crush Live Poker YouTube and click on the event and grab the link. And if you have the link, even before the show starts, you can always watch it after the fact. Or you can subscribe, like I said, and listen to it in a podcast on Crush Live Poker. So I would say maybe after the first or the second caller, I'm going to interject and show you some of my political bets and where I stand in terms of money, as I have about 200 grand on the election, and I haven't really tweeted it out a couple times. But let's get into it here. It's November 2nd. It's the day before the election. As always, if you want to get on the show, you can pre-submit your hand by emailing bart@crushlivepoker.com. bart@crushlivepoker.com. I will always give priority to Crush Live Poker subscribers if you tell me you're a subscriber. And I try to read all the hand histories as well. So I usually will get back like on a Sunday or something like that, Saturday or Sunday. But we've got 5 calls here. 5 calls here today. So let us get into it here. And the very first caller here comes from the 562 area, I believe. 561 in Florida, Battleground State, Florida. Hello, sir. You are up first.
Hey, Bart. How's it going, man?
Good. How's it going? By the way, I'm in the live chat here, too. I'm looking at all the live chats.
It's going good, man. I got a hand from Daytona Kennel Club, 2-5 game.
Okay.
Yeah, 800 cap.
So 2-5 no limit. Daytona. I think I've been there. I've been to Daytona once, but I'm not sure if I've been in the Kennel Club.
Here's the dog track there. So.
Dog track, yeah. Greyhounds. Do they race greyhounds in Florida still, or is that all done?
They're not at Daytona. I think Kennel is still doing it till the end of the year, and then it's done in Florida.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right, so 800 cap. 800 effective, right?
Okay. No, so I got 780 effective. Okay. 800 cap game.
Oh, okay.
It's Villaina's young Asian girl. We just combined tables, so this is the very first hand. I've seen her before, but not much about her.
Okay.
So it folds to me on the button. I open the 20 with King of Diamonds, 9 of Spades.
Okay.
So she's in the small blind. She 3-bets to 50.
So you make it 15 from the button with King 9 offsuit?
I made it 20.
20.
And she 3-bet to 50.
Okay, so raise to 20. And small blind to 50. Now, obviously, that's very small 3-bet sizing here, right, from her. So, I mean, I would say typically you're not going to defend here with King 9 off. And I would say that the latest position, I mean, I've seen King Jack off on the button probably as a cusp against against somebody who's, 3-betting from the blind. King Queen, I would definitely call. King 9, but, it's 20. You're basically calling, 30 for like 80 with position? Something like that?
Yeah.
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 It's 2.5x. So yeah, I mean, it's probably pretty close, but she sized you in there. So I guess hero calls, right?
Yeah, so I call pots. I got 100. The flop comes queen of diamonds,
Mm-hmm.
10 of diamonds,
Yep.
5 of diamonds.
So Queen of
Queen ten
Diamonds,
five.
10 of Diamonds, 5 of Diamonds, all monotone. You've got King of Diamonds, 9 of Spades. So you've got the King high flush draw on a gut shot here to a Jack, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So now she bets 50.
Okay.
Cause
So
I call
small blind bets 50. Hero calls. Pot is 200. Okay.
200. Yep.
Yep.
The turn now is queen of spades.
Turn is the Queen of Spades. So obviously your draw gets worse, or it's one less card and the board is paired, but that could be a scary card for her.
Well, that was my thinking, is that this card is good for me.
Okay.
so so now she bets 95.
Okay. So what I will say here is that, like, kind of a common live pattern you'll see. I don't know if we can necessarily put a ton of credence here in this type of sizing, but what you'll see is somebody come out and bet like 50 or 60 again on the turn, and they don't want to like allow a free card to come off, but they don't love the queen. Here at
Gotcha.
95, it's like, half the size of the pot. It's kind of interesting. I mean, you're getting 3 to 1. Obviously, you could be dead to a full house. Your diamond might not be good here either if she has the ace of
Yep.
diamonds. So I don't. It's probably pretty close. I mean, obviously, too, you could catch a jack and she could have ace king or something like that. But it's probably close. It's not the absolute worst call in the world, I would think, to this sizing. But to any more, I think you've got to fold.
Gotcha. So I call.
All right, so hero calls, and
I
we're
got the
looking
pot at
at
like
what, 380,
400.
380, something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just under 400. Yep.
Okay.
So the river is a 2 of hearts,
So total brick. Okay. Yep.
and now she checks.
So small blind checks. Okay.
Yes. So I just jammed the rest in there, 575 all in,
Wow. Okay.
and
So hero, don't tell us what happened. So small blind checks. Hero jams 575 all in. This is
I
interesting.
just yeah, I find in these games where when I go for it when I'm bluffing, I go big because in these games that I play in, they'll call you at one pair if you go pot. So I just you know I tend to size up when I'm gonna bluff.
Yeah, I mean,
If
it's
that
it,
makes
it's definitely an interesting. It's interesting. It doesn't. It's not. She certainly doesn't seem like she has a queen or a flush, right? Now, a lot of people will take these lines, and I'll be like, well, like for example, let's say the queen didn't pair, and you went call call, and then the river was a brick, and they check, and you jam. I don't necessarily like the jam all that much here. I think you could probably credibly represent the fact that you might have a queen here too. The polarized gives her, obviously a worse price here on the call. What you're really trying to fold out here is, aces, jacks, maybe something like that.
yeah.
Jacks might make another protection bet here on the turn. You block, kings. If she had like ace king or something like that, or even, aces with a diamond in her hand, um, you know, in theory, she's supposed to call down more. But what's interesting about that combo is that how often are you continuing to call, you know, basically, the turn with just like the king of diamonds? It could be like king jack. The other thing too is that she had like kings with the king of diamonds. It's kind of the same thing. Like you would have to be running a bluff with aces with the ace of diamonds. I'd almost think in her position, if you had the king of diamonds, that would be, if I had the king of diamonds and I was in her position with kings, I'd almost have a worse blocker, even though we think about the river being, well, call with the diamond, don't call with the diamond. But if I don't see enough people turn the ace of diamonds here into a bluff, and I've got the king of diamonds, that blocks all your bluffs. So would I make this play here? If I were to make the play, I would use this sizing. How about that? Let's see what some of the people here in the live chat say. But it wouldn't surprise me if you're going to get called down. So what ended up happening here?
Yeah, so she tanked a little bit and she called. She actually had queen jack with the jack of diamonds. So I mean, I was drawing
Queen
pretty
Jack
bad.
offsuit with the Jack of
Yeah,
Diamonds. Well, I mean, obviously that's the problem with continuing to the turn here, right?
yeah, yeah,
Just because, but it is kind of surprising that she checked the end, with the
yeah.
queen.
I mean,
It's not a terrible play
does
by
she
her, but it's
call?
just, you just usually will see people not go into a check call shell with trips.
Yeah, she didn't snap call. She definitely thought about it for a little bit, but I mean, do I get everything else to fold pretty much besides the queen? I don't know. I just went for it.
Some people just aren't going to fold over pairs here too. So it's like, I mean, the easy thing to
Yeah,
say is I'm not in
I
the
get it.
nature of trying to bluff somebody off of like, aces or kings, or something like that. But yeah, I mean, she's three betting here with the queen jack off, but I think that the sizing is correct. And um, again, I'm interested here with the check on the river because a lot of players will just basically bet off like their own hands. They'll check an overpair, but they wouldn't necessarily check, a queen. But usually in these games, most of the win rates come from value, some from bluffs.
Gotcha.
So you got to figure out like, hey, what type of player am I basically
Yeah.
bluffing?
No, I get it. I
But
get
thanks
it.
for the call, man. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks a lot. Good luck
All
with your
right.
best man. Bye.
All right. Cool. All right. Let's go to our next caller here. And this is going to be Miles. Oh, this is not Miles. This is 509 is next, then Miles. 509, you are up next, sir. This is what, Jeffrey?
Yeah, hey, how's it going?
Good. How's it going?
Doing all right.
Got a hand first, Jeffrey?
So yeah, I have a hand for you here. I played at Borgata a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
2-5 at the Borgata.
2-5. Okay.
And it's playing 7 max with the plexiglass.
So 7 max with plexiglass. Okay.
And we have the effective stack of just about 1,500.
Okay.
So there's 2 limpers. We're on the button with ace of clubs, 10 of clubs, and we opened a 30.
So 2 limpers in front, and you open a 30 over the top with ace 10 suited of clubs on the button.
Right.
Okay.
The small blind then 3 bets to 135.
Small blind 3 bets to 135. Okay.
And it folds to us, and we decide to make the call.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, I mean, it is a large, obviously, 3 bet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's making it basically, 4.5x, but I think that this is definitely a call. I mean, once you start to see really, really large sizing, again, computer modeling usually says that like suited aces a lot of times are a call. Worse suited aces the worst rank suited aces are like ace deuce, ace 6, then sort of followed by like ace 7, ace 8, then ace 3, ace 4. But ace 10, sheer high card value connectivity, I think we have a call. If there was like cusp, there are calls.
Right, and so the table had been really passive, and it was really just me and this guy on my left who had been opening and taking down blinds and limps a lot. So I expect that he has a wider range three betting me, knowing that I'm opening pretty wide from the button.
Okay. I mean, there are 2 limpers in front. Obviously, he's incentivized to, try to get some of those people out of there, but that's interesting. So it looks like the pot's like maybe, 285, something like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, flop comes out, ace of spades, 9 of clubs, 8 of spades.
Ace of spades, 9 of clubs, 8 of spades. Okay, so you've got top pair, backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw.
Right.
Okay.
He checks, and I decided to check back. I wasn't sure about this, but I'm thinking I'm either way ahead or way behind, so bigger aces. But I'm not sure if I should be going for value against like jack through your kings.
I mean, I think I would bet here. In late position configuration versus late position configuration, you've got the good backdoors. The other thing, too, you just have to understand is even if the guy is like a thinking player, I think that we can agree a lot in this particular configuration that ace king and ace queen is probably going to be represented as a c bet from him on this board for value.
Mm-hmm.
So, what does that leave? And then, of course, a lot of times he'll be betting like his backdoors and his bluffs and things like that. I mean, that sort of leaves like maybe like an ace X right? An ace X suited type of hand, which is single paired ace. And when I say like ace queen plus, I'm talking about aces up as well.
Right.
And then like, kings, queens, jacks. It's just so rare to see somebody 3-bet pre-flop and then check fold on a board like this. Like, what would he have to
Hmm.
have here? So that's why I like a small bet here. I think you could probably start maybe with, a 1/3 pot size bet, get some value now. I mean, I can understand thinking of checking and maybe going for 2 streets later on, but it's so rare to see somebody just check fold. I feel like as the 3-better on a board like this, and as they should not be for a 1/3 sizing with the pairs between, tens and kings.
Hmm. Right. Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
So you check it back, okay?
Right. So I do check it back. The turn comes back, or turn comes out a jack of clubs.
Jack of clubs, okay. So you got ace 10 of clubs, and the board is ace of spades, 9 of clubs, 8 of spades, jack of clubs. So you've got top pair, and you've got an open-ended straight draw and a flush draw, right?
Right.
Yeah. By the way, some
Yeah.
people in the chat are saying, wouldn't kings and queens bet here? I mean, that's sort of a newer school play, but not everybody is studying like computer modeling and flop bucketing and things like that. I know, as I talked about like on the last show, it's becoming easier and easier for people that don't even necessarily use like Pio as a solver to find these things. Like I said, I have an app on my phone now that does it kind of well, but whether or not this board is represented as a c-bet 100% of the time with your entire range, I probably don't think that it is. But even if you were to come up with a board that's c-bet like a7 deuce rainbow or something like that, people are still commonly checking like kings, queens, jacks, scared of the ace. So anyways,
Hmm.
285 turns the jack of clubs. Okay.
Yeah. So the villain checks again,
Okay.
and now we bet 150 into 285.
So 150 into 285. Okay. I mean, I would think it's a little bit of an awkward size here. I might either go larger or smaller. What you could
Hmm.
do is you could bet, almost even close to the size of the pot, and then evaluate what the river is here, because you've got so many cards to improve your hand. The board's very draw heavy, so you could be making that bet with a lot of draws. Or you could size down to, again, sort of like 1/3 the size of the pot, something like that. But it seems to me like you're going to have the best hand here. I mean, I guess occasionally he could have like, one of the hands that you were losing to that might sometimes check the flop is ace jack, which obviously would make aces up now, and I would expect that to bet off here on turn. So it really seems like you've got the best hand here, unless he's playing like ace queen, like super defensive.
Hmm. Right. Yeah. At this point, I'm almost certain I'm ahead. And he looks at me for quite a while, takes his time, and makes the call.
So small blind calls. So the pot now is 585, right?
Right.
Okay.
And the river comes out the jack of spades.
So the jack of spades here on the river. So final board is ace of spades, 9 of clubs, 8 of spades, turns the jack of clubs, river's the jack of spades. So front door spades come in, and the jack
Hmm.
now pairs, right?
Right.
Okay.
And the villain checks again. This is the spot that I was mostly curious about. I think because I made the decision to check the flop, and I am beating kings and queens, and I mean maybe even tens here. I think it makes sense to go for value, but I wasn't sure if there should be a check back when the flush comes in and the board pairs.
I think it's pretty close. I mean, here's the thing, right? What are you trying to target here? You're trying to target like a weak ace that's playing a pot control line, right? Because your
Hmm.
kicker's going to play, right? If he has like ace 5, right? You win with the 10. And, kings and queens, something like that. What's interesting here is that the front door coming in, the way that you've played this hand, is actually a little bit less relevant than if the back door were to come in. And what I mean by that is that because you check back the flop and there were front door spades, I think that a lot of players aren't going to think that you're going to have a flush because you checked it back. Obviously, you could. So
Mhm.
if the backdoor came in when you started a bet on turn, I'd almost be less likely to make a thin value bet because people might fold other hands out because they're like, oh, the back door came in. But now when the front door comes in and you don't bet off on the flop, they just don't think that you're going to have that many flushes here. Do I think that you have the best hand here? Yeah, I think you've got the best hand unless somehow he has a jack that didn't bet the flop. So what would that be, like king jack? I mean, were those going to be give ups? Did he have pure give ups that didn't have a jack? I mean, again, the river concept of value betting is that when you bet, you have to be called more than 50% of the time. It's not, you'd have the best hand here 90% of the time, but if you're not going to get called more than 50% of the time, you can't bet. And especially if I was playing against a tricky player who was sometimes capable of putting me in a really shitty spot by check raising the river in somewhat of a balanced way, or if I was playing in a tournament where if you bet and you were wrong, the chips lost mean more than the chips gained. Like in a tournament, this seems like a check back, especially when people play a lot of pot control lines with things. Like you'll see people like check ace king on the flop. They're just trying to keep the pot as small as possible with one pair. In a cash game, I think it's pretty close. And I could see betting here. But again, I wouldn't want to be up against a guy that could put my life like in a world of hurt. That's probably not going to happen here at 2-5 Borgata. Then you have to start thinking about, well, is this guy going to call me down? Because also, too, now when the jack pairs, not only can your opponent occasionally have a jack, but if you were betting a jack, you could have a jack now, too. So this is different than if the river was the deuce of spades, right? Because your opponent is losing to another hand with kings or queens. So
Right.
I think I would probably bet. It wouldn't surprise me if you're value owning yourself, but like I've talked about before, you have to value own yourself a fair amount of the time if you want to be a good no limit hold'em player. Because, and what I mean by value owning is betting betting your hand for value, and it's not the best hand, but you're not betting it as a bluff, you're betting it for value, right? And the reason why you have to value own yourself a fair amount of the time is because if when you're value betting at the end, when you're called, you're always good, then that means that you're checking back a shit ton of hands that you shouldn't be checking back right at the end. Because it means like when you're betting and you're called, you're always good, like you're just checking so many other hands that you should be betting, which of course you're losing value on, right? So I don't mind a bet here.
Well, we do decide to bet. I make it about 350.
350 is kind of big.
What do you think would be a better sizing?
I might try to give him a pretty good price and bet like 200. That's what I was saying. Like, I just want to make sure that I don't have somebody that's tricky here that can like make my life a living hell somehow with some sort of river check raise. But I'd like a little bit smaller bet. But okay, you bet 350.
Right. And the villain does call. And he shows down king jack of diamonds.
What is it? What did he show down?
Showed down king jack of diamonds.
Okay. So he did have a jack that was not bet off on the flop.
Right.
That's interesting. By the way, Brett Mason Media says solver checks back 100%. That's interesting information, and the reason why I like to go to sometimes solvers is more of the bet size and stuff on flop, but I don't think that has that much relevance on rivers because here, it's funny. The river would probably be the street that I would go to the solver the least in a situation like this when making a thin value bet. You know what I mean? Because it's just like, well, there's so many things that your opponent's not doing that's suboptimal. Like he's not going to have like all the check raise bluffs in here.
Yeah.
So if you node locked out on the solver that there were no check raise bluffs, wouldn't very well easily be a bet, right? And then calling at certain frequencies to smaller sizing, like with kings and queens and the wrong combos. I can get on. I mean, I can get on board. I think that the real sort of nuanced spot here is the front door came in. You didn't bet off on the flop, as opposed to me trying to check back like on the back door that might come in. And again, if you were playing in a tournament, I would very easily check back on the flop.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But anyways, I appreciate the call. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Let's go to Miles, and then we'll get into. I'll pull up my sheet for like 5 minutes. Miles in New Jersey. Hello. Whoop. There we go. Miles.
I'm here.
Hey.
Can you hear me out, Bob?
Yep. That was my fault.
Sorry, I was getting used to the star key.
No worries.
Yeah, I'm in New York City.
Oh, okay. New York City.
Yeah, New Jersey's my original home. Anyway, how have you been?
Good. And a long time no talk. So when you emailed me in, you had mentioned something because I remember you had told me you're a longtime Crush Life Broker subscriber. So, I don't know, maybe it was a couple years ago that you were going to be making sort of the full-time switch to PLO from No Limit Cash. And then you had said in your email today that you were sort of going back to No Limit Cash, that you had played a bunch of 5-card PLO. And I know they play that at Maryland Live. So what was playing all these hours of live PLO cash? What was your impression with 5-card?
5-card was extremely high variance, higher than PLO. I would say 2 to 3 times higher variance than PLO, given the nature of the Maryland Live 5-card game.
Is that because people play more hands pre-flop or what?
Well, yes, but it's a factor of a few things. One is we're playing 7-handed. It's a 2-2 blind game, and even though the buy-in range is from 200 to 1,000, very few people are buying in for the cap. So you have a lot of short buys of $200 to $300, and that means you're seeing flops 5, 6-handed very routinely. So it's like you're just showing down the best hand on the river to win big pots. You get lucky if you're deep with another player that's also deep, and then there's some play, and then you can use your skills and your position to your advantage. But it's unlikely in 5-card that you can say 3-bet and isolate earlier mid-position raiser and see the flop heads up. It's just not possible, or didn't seem possible to me.
Do they have training material on? Are there different sites that have training material on like raw pre-flop 5-card ranges? I mean, I know that like sites have like run Monk or Solver across like just like for months and still have to bucket like certain things. But I'm just interested to see like what a 5-card sort of high hand is.
I have not seen any. So if anyone has anyone, I'd love it if they'd share it with you and they'd share it with me.
I mean, the one thing that I will say and I assume that this is probably the same thing in 5-card high, is that from playing a couple hundred hours of Big O, even recently, and I didn't get a chance to play that much Big O, but I did right before COVID, I quickly realized, even just after like maybe, 10,000 hands or whatever, a few hundred hours or 300 or 400 hours, how bad low pairs are in a 5-card PLO game. Because if you flop bottom full and someone's got trips, like you have to play it so defensively, you can get blown off the hand, and somebody's flipping with you with 4 overcards too.
And you know what, Bart? The guys in Maryland are just like raising all in with bottom set in a 5-card game. They're that bad, but that doesn't mean that that's enough for you to put in regular wins at that game. It's just the variance is insanely high. So I just decided, just because I really haven't played live until the last month for about 8 months. I played live full time. When I talked to you back a year ago when I was transitioning to playing full time after selling my business, I started playing PLO full time at Parks in Philly. I played probably 400 hours January, February, and March of this year, of which the vast majority, I'm talking 95+%, was PLO, and I did very well. I mean, I doubled my goal over. In fact, we got shut down mid-March, so I was over 200% of my goal in say 10 weeks. So I
I
was
just
really
can't.
pleased.
I
And
just can't imagine like as boring as I get in full ring like PLO 4 card. I can't even imagine like 8-handed 5 card. Like how nit fast you're supposed to play it. But I can understand the
you know,
frustration.
that's a very good point. And the only thing, one of the main notes to myself was if I were to go back to 5 card, I would play so painfully tight that I don't know if I could even handle it, because it is brutal how tight you need to play with that 5th card, because usually that 5th card is some sort of dangler,
Mm-hmm.
or it's a third suit of the your third spade in your hand, and it's not a good thing to have an extra suit in your hand. So it's really, really tough to pick up premium pre-flop hands that you should be playing.
No, absolutely. So you got a no limit hand for us?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So I went to Borgata, like the previous caller, for the first time this past week, because they reopened last week for the first time since March. So I'm at a 2-5 no limit game, $300 to $1,000 buy-in. I bought into the cap, and I start this hand with about $800.
Okay.
And I'm in mid position 1, and there are 2 other villains in this hand. Villain 1 has about $540. And he is under the gun.
Mm-hmm.
And villain 2 has about $500, and he is in MP2 on my left.
Okay.
Okay, so we pick up King of Hearts, King of Diamonds, pre-flop.
Okay.
Under the gun, villain 1 raises to standard $20, and he's an unknown to me. I haven't seen him play too many hands, and I've only been on the table with him about a half an hour.
Okay.
So with a premium high pair, I re-raised to $65, so to keep my range a little bit wide rather than raising. I thought raising 65 was a good number, since I thought he was a fairly tight player. I didn't want to have him fold immediately. And the player on my left, who I know very well from years of playing with him in New York City, he's a very loose, aggressive player. He flat calls to 65, which is actually not that surprising to me, because he's such a loose player.
And how deep did you say he was again? I know you did before.
500.
500.
The villain 2 on my left. Yeah.
So under the gun to 20, hero and MP1, 3 bets to 65 with King, Queen of Hearts, cold call.
King.
Oh, King of Hearts, King of Diamonds?
King of Hearts, King of Diamonds, yeah.
Okay, King, MP2 calls, okay.
Right, and then MP1 flat calls.
You mean the under the gun flat? Under the gun flat calls?
Under the gun, excuse me. Yeah, I'm reading my notes poorly. Yeah, the initial raiser just flats.
Okay.
The re-raise.
So 3 ways.
We see the flop 3 ways, yeah.
Oh. Okay.
So flop is Queen of Diamonds, 8 of Diamonds, 8 of Hearts.
Queen of Diamonds, 8 of Diamonds, 8 of Hearts, and you've got King with the King of Diamonds.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I have the King of Hearts, too. So
I
guess I have a front door heart draw, potentially, runner. Villain 1 checks. Because of the player on my left who's so bluffy and so crazy, I decided to check, because I also didn't see a whole lot of value in betting that flop, other than maybe getting called from some sort of queen high hand, like a ace queen, which would be the best scenario, or queen 10, jack queen, something like that. So I decided to check also, just to maybe see what the turn brought and see what kind of action it was on if the villain on my left would take a stab. But he checked as well. So get check.
All right. So let me this is my fault. I just want to make sure I got the suits right and the board right. So it's Queen of Diamonds, 8 of Diamonds, 8 of Hearts.
Yes.
And you've got King of Hearts, King of Diamonds.
Correct.
Okay. And so you decide to check because you've got this sort of maniac guy to your left here.
Yeah.
And the guy from under the gun's got 540, and the MP2's got about 500.
That's
right.
I
mean, I guess you can get obviously value later on because they only have maybe 3 pot sides bets left or something. But I mean, I would just, whenever I get in these spots, I just bet small, like 50 or 60 or something like that. And it's interesting because the whole idea of betting small, maybe not necessarily multi-way, but heads up, is because people will under defend, but in live poker, people will over defend to small bets. I feel like so. It's kind of almost like a way to slow play. Kings also needs a little bit of protection. I mean, I guess it's not terrible. You say, well, you block King, Queen, and maybe you can get some value later on. But okay, so it gets checked through.
Right. Turn is the 6 of clubs.
Okay.
Villain 1 checks again. Now I decide to bet about 85. I want to get some value for my hands.
Uh-huh.
Villain 2 flat calls the 85. And then villain 1 also makes the call of 85. So now the pot is about 447 or 445.
So you bet 85 on a 6 of clubs turn. Queen of diamonds, 8 of diamonds, 8 of hearts turns a 6 of clubs. And now it gets checked to you. You bet 85, and then you get a call and an overcall. The reason why I think that overcall is obviously pretty peculiar. Well, both calls are fairly peculiar, right? Because I think that you just based upon what you were saying, that this seems like the guy to your left is going to bet off Queen X a fair amount on the flop, right? Now we don't see a reflection of like there's front door diamonds, so you would think that at some point somebody's going to start to fast play trip eights if they have it. So it's just weird that you've got a call and a call. Because what are they calling with? You know what I mean? Like, what's the other guy over calling with? I mean, I guess he could have. He's the pre-flop raise. So, by the way, this is a good little lesson in hand reading too, right? You know, you look at it and you're like, well, there's 5-7, 7-9. I mean, the under the gun guy though, he's the pre-flop raiser, so that's pretty far out there to defend. I mean, obviously you see it before, but if you were to have a guy, here's the thing: you can just put all these things together. If you've got a guy that's loose enough that's going to be opening, say, like 9-7 suited or 5-7 suited from up front, and then call a 3-bet after somebody else cold calls in position, and then the board gets checked through, and most players aren't checking over pairs like in your spot, and now the turn's a 6, and you're sitting there with 9-7 or 5-7, and you're that type of player, I think there's a super high chance that type of player is going to bet the turn. Now that he's picked up open-ended and no one's shown any interest in the pot post-flop. So it's peculiar. It's peculiar to me. But you said that this guy is an unknown, but I mean, I guess somebody could be playing a queen sort of like passively, like queen, jack, queen 10, you know, something like that. But it looks like, so you said the pot's 45 and you've got what, like, well, you got them covered. So what, one guy's got, you know, 400 left, and then the other guy's...
Yeah, one guy is 350 and one guy is 370 left.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, let's go to the river.
So the river is another blank. It's like like a 3 of hearts. Doesn't complete any straight and doesn't complete any flush.
Yep.
And villain 1 checks.
Okay.
And I figure the pot's 447. At this point, they both called the turn. I thought an all-in value bet of their effective stacks, which was 370 at the most from villain 1, was a good bet because maybe they put me on some form of a bluff since I checked the flop. Maybe somebody has pocket jacks and they're going to get sticky. Maybe somebody has that queen that we talked about, like that queen jack, queen 10, and they decide to look me up. So I thought that I was definitely opening my range up by going all in rather than trying to extract value with a half pot size bet on the river.
Here's my thought here. Something smells a little fishy to me here. And that obviously that's not a reason for you not to value bet, but the sheer fact that the pot is when you look at this from two sides, right? Just, you know, hand reading experience and a live dynamic. The fact that it goes call on the turn, I just think that, like, from your value side, your thick value side of moving all in, I think it's going to be much harder for them to call when all of a sudden you go bet all in here into 2 people. So that's number one. So if I kind of like what I'm thinking about on the value side is that if I want one of these guys to call, I'm going to bet smaller because I don't like, unless that guy up front has a weak queen here, I don't think that these guys have anything that's strong that's going to pay you off. Now, my second part is that I might smell a rat here a certain percentage of the time. And somebody might have quad 8s or like quad 6s, and now you're just opening yourself up. Whereas you could have gone for like pretty thin value of like 150, and then if somebody jams, you're like, this guy's, well, now I understand why the hand was played this way. He flopped 4 8s. You know what I mean?
Of course. Of course.
That's kind of what my feeling is here. So I don't know if I would choose an all-in sizing here.
I mean, that's definitely my reason for the call.
Yeah.
I thought my all-in was probably the wrong sizing.
It's just like, it's interesting when, like I said, when you come up with like what what do these guys have? Like it could be a thing where like the guy on the turn, like the guy in position has pocket sixes. The guy up front might have pocket queens. The guy up front might have quad eights. Like those are like hands that are possible here. And when you move all in, I think you're trying to target the guy from up front with a hand like queen jack or ace queen, but it doesn't make sense to me because those guys I think are going to bet that off a lot on the turn after it gets checked through on the flop. You know what I mean?
I do agree. I kind of put ace queen out of anybody's range by the time we got to the river.
Yeah.
So I do agree with you.
But so you moved all in, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Villain 2 on my left folds pretty quick.
Okay.
And then villain 1 goes into the tank. And when he went to the tank, he leaned back and he was like, wow, did you 3-bet me with an 8? And right then I was like, oh, brother, this guy has aces. And
by the way, before you reveal something, somebody in the live chat said something here, which is I just want to discuss it. This guy Scott says check the river. The issue here with checking the river, now the only thing I can say about checking the river with the way that you've set up this hand is that unless somehow that seems like this wild guy to your left, like unless he's gonna bluff at it, I still think that there's more value in betting the river to get called, unless we're going to go so far the other way that the overcall on the turn indicates that you're beaten. But the weird spot where you're like, I don't think I'm putting any more money in the pot here. I just want to get to the end because I don't think I've got the best hand. But the weird thing here is that if you check to the wild guy and he bets, you're probably going to call. So, which, you could induce a bluff, but it's usually in these spots, you want to err towards betting thinly for value because your opponents are going to make calling mistakes and they're not going to bet for value themselves. So that's why we usually err towards betting to get called as opposed to checking and then them checking back hands that they're supposed to value bet and not bluffing and things like that. But anyways, villain 2
and Bart, it didn't seem credible that a bluff on the river from the guy on my left would have made any sense when if he was going to bluff, he might have bluffed the flop or the turn, but not the river when it's a total brick. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. So
I think if I checked, he would have checked, and I was never going to check there ever.
So villain 2 folds, and what happens? The other guy calls?
Yeah, he called with aces, which I thought was the last hand I could put him on, given that he flatted my 3-bet pre-flop after I got an overcall from the villain on my left. It didn't make any sense to me.
What the? He has aces and he didn't 4-bet pre.
Correct.
Yeah, so, I don't know. I mean, again, I don't, it's an interesting, I think it's a little interesting hand reading exercise because of the way that it's sort of, it's a 3-bet pot and there's like weird action post flop. I assume he would have just called if you bet small.
Correct.
But yeah, that's really odd. That's really
yeah,
odd.
I mean, I don't write you in too many hands because I don't have too many hands where I feel like my hand reading is off by much, where this one just, I had to scratch my head. So
yeah, I mean, occasionally you're going to see stuff that's weird, right? Like, you're going to see stuff that's weird. But yeah, that's one that I would never have thought was going to be the thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
What can you do?
Yeah, I appreciate the call. Thank you very much. Good to talk to you, Miles, by the way. And all right, so let's go to Matt here in Australia, and then I'm gonna put a hey, what's up? But before you go, I'm gonna put you on mute here real quick, Matt. But just realized I cut that guy off. Sorry, Matt. Hold on one second. There was something I wanted to say, and then we're gonna go to Montana, and then after Matt, I'm gonna go to my little politics sheet if anybody's interested, and you see how much money I have going riding. But somebody had made a comment, and I meant to respond in the live chat not in the live chat, one of the comments from the video, one of the videos talking about this guy had like this unbelievable connection, and it was like one of the best sort of videos that they'd ever seen. So, yeah, there's an option to connect to this show, like basically via like a Google Meet almost. I don't use Google Meet. I use a conference. So if anybody wants to call into the show and you've got a good connection and you maybe even have a microphone, it will sound just like we're in the room. As opposed to a phone call. And that's what that was. And then of course, if you're overseas, you can do that too. Where it gets a little sort of gnarly is if you're talking through the computer and it kind of sounds like a speakerphone. But that reminds me too, originally I had said that this show was going to be earlier today because I was doing TCH live commentary, but I actually that got pushed back to next week. I'm doing the TCH live commentary next week. So next week, look for the show to start at 3 Eastern time. And again, the event will be up in the, on the YouTube Crush Live Poker page like a couple days before. So 3 p.m. Eastern time. And we'll lead into TCH live here tonight. All right. Adelaide, Australia.
That's right. Yes.
All right.
Can you hear me right?
Yep.
Yep. Cool. So we're playing 5-5 no limit hold'em just in my local place.
5.
And yeah, we're playing 5-handed at this stage. And on the email I said 6-handed, but we're playing 5-handed.
Okay.
And just a little bit of context. So it's about 4 a.m. So we've had a big long session.
Mm-hmm.
Main villain was crushing it. He's up like 3.5K. And I'd shown a big bluff about half an hour earlier on the river. So that's just a little bit of context for this hand.
Okay.
Alrighty. So villain is in the hijack and he opens up to 15.
By the
Folds
way,
to the button.
So hijack makes it 15. By the way, people in the live chat are saying you sound really good. So there you go. There's that computer connection.
Thank you.
So hijack to 15. Yep.
Yep. The button, who has just been calling everything, like
Mm-hmm.
pretty, I wouldn't say he's a whale because he does know what he's doing, but he's very, very loose.
Mm-hmm.
He calls. Small blind folds, and it's over to me in the big blind, and I look down at Jack 9 of diamonds.
And how deep are the stacks about?
1730 effective is what I have, and the villain obviously covers me. And
Okay.
The button gets
Australian dollars.
Yes, Australian dollars. Yeah.
Slightly less than $1, US dollar, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hijack to 15, button calls. You're playing 5-handed. You've got Jack 9 of diamonds in the big blind. By the way, I didn't pick this up because I thought it was. I remember from your email that you're going to 3-bet this hand. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting 3-bet, but I didn't realize that it was 5-handed. So yeah, I mean, listen, you can certainly throw in some 3-bets here, right? Because of the dead money, right? You're getting an overlay. Yeah.
I think this is one of the critical mistakes I make in the hand. I make it $80, which I feel like is way too large, but I'm not.
Is too large, you think? Hijack, 15, button calls.
15.
I mean, it's what, like 5. I mean, you'd be surprised at like how large you're supposed to make like raises from out of position. Although in multi-way spots, I don't really hate it. I mean, it's a little bit of a dance that I remember this from old school Crush Live Poker Top section when I used to host it with Conlon, and we do this stuff. And I've always talked about how it's weird the way that the computer would reflect 3-bet sizing in this spot, because like at like 100 BBs. You see people use insane 3-bet sizing, so like 7, 8x to like cut down on like set odds of their opponents. Yep. And then, but as you get deeper, the positional disadvantage that you're at starts to trump. You're just at a more positional disadvantage because you're deeper and you're out of position. And I think it's reflected as like a less voluminous 3-bet. And the sizing isn't as large. It goes through different, it's weird, like from 200 to 400 big blinds and then higher. Yeah. But I don't think that that's a huge mistake. So you 3-bet to 80. Okay.
Yep. To 80. Villain calls. And to my surprise, the button comes along for the ride as well, and he calls. So we're on 3 ways to the flop.
So you have a double flatter. What I mean by a double flatter is that usually that is going to be a fairly weak range as a double flat. And the interesting thing here where live players are behind from the double flat perspective on the button is that if you double flat, meaning if you call a raise and then call a 3-bet and you're up against an aware player, they can very, very liberally barrel you off of your hand unless you're defending correctly. And just the sheer fact that a double flat is sort of not kind of a thing to do at 5-handed would mean that that player is not going to be that advanced. But the theory goes, if you double flat, you actually have to get to the end a fair amount with like top pair, because it's going to be one of the best hands you're going to have, because you don't have like aces, kings, queens, jacks, tens, and someone can just go bet. So, but you can use that, of course, against them too. So looks like the pot's about 240.
Interesting that you say that, Bart. So
yeah.
with hand. So the flop comes out 4 of diamonds, 8 of diamonds, 8 of hearts.
4 of diamonds, 8 of diamonds, 4 of hearts?
No, 4 diamond,
Uh-huh.
8 diamond, 8 heart.
8 of hearts. Okay. So you have a front door flush draw.
Yep.
Okay.
Correct.
Yep.
Again, probably the other main mistake I made in this hand. I bet 220, which is obviously on the larger side.
Well, so if you get a board of like mid low like 8 deuce deuce and your heads up in a 3-bet
Yep.
pot, you're allowed to use like this type of large sizing. But multi-way like and this is not 8 deuce deuce, by the way. There's a difference between deuce 8 8. I know it's 8 8 4, but there's a difference between 8 deuce deuce and deuce 8 8. You know what I mean? There's a difference.
Yeah, I got that. Yep.
So I'm just trying to go to the extreme. So heads up, you can start to use that type of sizing on certain boards. Usually this is going to be too large, especially in a multi-way pot, because you can just do this later on. You know what I'm saying? Like in the hand, you can start like making larger bets later on scare cards and things like this. Like, I mean, I know I used to say, well, I back in the day, like I used to start betting large to sort of put the fear of God, kind of in people. And that will sometimes, that is a thing sometimes, but you're going to see like a reflection of like a fair amount of overcards that are going to come if people are going to be holding on with pairs here. You know what I'm saying? Yep. Like 5, 6s, something like that. So I think that the sizing here is a little bit large. I think that you could probably just start it with like 80, or something like that. But okay, you bet 200.
220.
220. 220. Yep. My bad. Yeah.
Yep. And villain calls and the button folds.
So next to act calls.
Yep.
Right. But this guy's not the double flatter though. The button was the double flatter. I just want to point that out.
Button was a double flatter. The villain was the guy originally raised.
Right. So here bets 220. Wow. Hijack calls. Wow. That should be a really strong hand. That should be a really strong hand where it's like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So you put 440 in on the flop. So the pot is what, 680 now?
685. Yep.
Okay.
And we head to the turn. The turn is the 7 of clubs. So we pick up a gut shot as well. And my thinking at this stage was I want to apply as much pressure as I can to this guy. I perceived him as weak just from my sort of live read of him. So I bet 430. Obviously into the pot of 685.
Well, let me ask you this question, though. Again, like when you bet 220 into 240, right? And he's got a guy behind you, right? Yeah. A guy behind you. And he calls the 220 on the flop. What kind of range do you think that is? Like how do you perceive him to be weak? You mean just because he was a maniac player, or like he was just he didn't know what was going on?
He's a very, very good player. He's a really, really good player. But I put him on something like a small pocket pair, or I know I block obviously the diamonds, but potentially a flush draw or something like that. But I just didn't think he was crazy, crazy strong with aces, kings, or any of his real top of his range stuff.
Well,
that's just my
he might not have top of his range stuff because that might be 4-bet pre-flop. But here's the thing where I think that you've got a little logic disconnect here, though. If you think he's a really good player, and I've had people that have called in before, and then they say, "Oh, this guy's a really good player," and then they turn over some crazy shit. But you said, "Oh, pairs." There's no way pair. Like if you put me in that spot and I open like 5, 6s, whatever, I can't call your bet with a guy behind me. Or I shouldn't be calling your bet. That's why how extreme a scenario it is.
Yeah. Okay.
The sheer fact that he called next to act to that type of sizing on the flop is extreme strength. Okay. I mean, I think I check the turn here all day. I mean, I don't know what at what like I'm probably gonna call with like jacks plus in his spot, but 10s and 9s. It's just like those are real kind of cusp hands. And by the way, if he has some of those hands, you block 9s, those are going to check through. If you check anyways, you're going to see reverse free cards. So anyway, so hero bets what, 430?
430, and he called, obviously.
Hijack calls. So now the pot is 1545, and looks like you've put in 660. You've got what, like 1,000 left, something like that?
I've got $1,002 left.
Okay, yeah.
And the river breaks my heart. It's the king of hearts, so we miss. and we're sitting there with Jack high,
Uh-huh.
and I thought to myself, "Look, I did not have too much logic going into this river decision.
Mm-hmm.
Wanted to apply maximum pressure. As I said, the read that I got on him was that he just was not very, very strong. And I thought that by applying max pressure, by jamming all in, I could get a fold. That was my logic. It's not the greatest logic in the world, but that's what I was thinking at the time. And so I
So
jam.
so you move all in for like 1,000. Moves all in for
Yeah.
1,000. All right. So here's the thing here. So, you know, the texture is a little bit iffy here with the 488 and the 7 coming in, which brings in straights and stuff like that. Like if the turn was a 3, or even if it was like a 9, or well, 9 would give you a pair. But here's my thought here is that you could run a triple barrel on a board like this on sort of a similar run out that might not be quite as sort of straightening, just a little bit differently.
Okay.
But the whole reason why you start with smaller bets multi-way is that you've sort of shaped the hand kind of like in this manner where your opponent at least can arrive on the river with like weak ranges. Even though this appears to be such a good bluff card for you, I really think your opponent is strong here, like just based upon, again, like, you know, 9s and 10. I mean, I guess you might get like 9s and 10s to folding and you block like jacks and 9s here. The other thing too that I'm starting to think about is that if this guy gets to the end here somehow with like 9s or 10s or something, your line looks awfully peculiar to me too. Like, what are you taking this line with aces?
I
You
think I
know,
would.
are you taking this line with
I think I
pocket
would.
kings where it's like, well, now you know the guy doesn't really have a king if you've got pocket kings. So, you know, there's a couple things going on. Number one, I think that the guy actually might have a really strong hand that he's not folding. And number two, the parts of his range that he's getting here that aren't that strong might get curious because this is an odd
Yeah.
line to me on paper.
Yep. No, exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I would say here. It's again sort of similar to the other caller where you might be running into some like massive strength here, like 4s and 8. I mean, the guy doesn't have to raise off with any 8 here. If he's got, well, obviously 7-8 suited, you know, full house. If he has ace 8,
Yeah.
when you're taking this type of sizing, so I think it all comes back to that flop sizing here, and then him calling next to act. It's just like, whoa. He really shouldn't be over defending here in this spot. So what ended up happening? You moved in for 1,000. What happened?
And he tanked for about probably 4 or 5 minutes, really, really deep into the tank, thinking it over. You can see the cogs turning. I'm sitting there just praying for a fold, and eventually he tosses in the chip for the call,
Uh-oh.
and he rolls over ace queen of diamonds for ace high, and he's good.
Ace queen of diamonds. Wow.
Yep. Ace
Well,
high, and he's good.
so he had the front door nut flush draw.
Yep.
And then got there at the end. I mean,
No, I didn't get there. He still had.
well, I
That's
mean,
right.
no, I know he didn't get there. No, I mean, get there at the end, but he made the call at the end.
No, he
Here's
did.
the thing
Yeah,
about
made
his
the call.
hand. I mean, I was expecting you to say like 10s. The
Hmm.
problem that I have probably with his hand is that he has to do some deep soul searching to find the bluffs that you have when he has the nut flush draw, right?
Yep.
I mean, you can see how much easier a call this would be if he had like 10s, right,
Yep.
against your range. So I don't know about that call by him.
I was shocked when he rolled it over. I was thinking, how the heck do you call that? Yeah, that was a bit. I asked him about it, sort of after the hand, and this was his logic. I said, like, how can you call that? Pretty much, like, great call, well done, but how can you call that? And he said, pretty much what you said, but he said my line was so peculiar, so weird, and so fishy that I'm only representing aces for thin value, pocket kings for full house, quad eights or pocket fours are really, maybe pocket sevens as well, the only hands I can credibly rep there. Maybe ace 8 suited as well. So he said there's not many hands that I can actually play in this way.
I mean, it kind of starts off from your large bet on the flop, because what I would say is that, like, well, first of all, with him having ace queen of diamonds, like I said, it's hard for you to find some bluffs. I understand what he's saying post flop. because usually people aren't, doing a whole lot of 3-betting with your specific hand of the big blind. If you had sized normal on the flop and you sort of had a robust 3-betting range here in a spot like this, you could sort of invent 4s and 7s, but it's hard for me, which would forceful would be on the full house and then 7s, but it's hard for me to think that you would want to take that sizing with those hands either. So, you're going to bet 220 with 7s. So I understand what he is saying. However, and I've made this mistake a few times in my career before, I don't like to call with hands where I accidentally lose to a bluff.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that.
Like,
what if I get threes and just decided to go crazy?
or like you had ace 4 or some shit like that. You know what I mean? It just seems when your bluff catching hand loses to some bluffs, and then most importantly, right? He blocks the primary bluffs, right? He blocks the primary bluffs of diamonds. So I understand what he's saying, but his specific choice of hand composition as a call seems a little bit out to lunch. I don't think that's a winning call. But anyways, no, I appreciate the call. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Bart. Cheers.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. All right, guys. So I'm just going to do this. And then I'm going to put, because I'm going to be putting this up, the live replay, I'm going to put it up listed. And I meant to say it up in the front of the fucking show, but I forgot. I'll put it in the description because I'm sure people will want to look at it a little bit or something like that. But I'll be brief. So anyways, I made this. I'm not going to go over it. If you will do my Twitter and stuff. So I probably worked on this for maybe, I would say, I don't know. God, it's been like, I've probably put 100 hours into the politics betting this year. Yeah, I would say like 100 hours, I would want to say. I think something like that. And that all comes down to tomorrow. But basically what I have done is I've modeled the common, and this is just a small selection actually of the most common ones. I've got the whole thing here, but the lines that have the most value basically. And then, so basically, I've got Bookmaker, Borgata, MyBookie, BetOnline, and BetAnySports, which are all very, very easily accessible from the US. And one of the reason why I've been able to get so many bets down is because crypto, Bitcoin, like something that really wasn't as prevalent in 2016. I don't think it was really accepted, where I can just get money in and out. If you didn't have Bitcoin, and I don't actually believe in Bitcoin in the sense as an investment. For this type of stuff, it's great. And if you want to send money around and not have it get tracked, which, that's part of what it is, but you just get money in and out really, really easily. And, the thing that people don't understand is that you kind of have to get a little sophisticated where you've got to get money into like a Coinbase Pro or a Binance and have a little bit of a history. You can't just do it in one day because they'll sort of like ACH money in, and then they don't realize, they can trade, the crypto, but they can't take it out until the ACH clears, because you could always reverse the ACH. So I do a lot of bank wires where it's basically instant, but I basically looked at 538 modeling, 538.com. Nate Silver puts out basically a predictive percentage for each state. And then I wrote formulas that converted money lines into probabilities. And then I basically, took the difference between the market probability and the 538 probability to get EV. And that's what I've done across, and these are the major ones. And, this isn't up to date right now, but I've got a lot of money down on Florida. I've got a lot of money down on national, and basically all my bets are on Biden. And it's not even the politics of it. I have my own views about the politics of it, but the market has been unbelievably high EV with Biden. There's just a lot of money coming in on Trump, which has kept the prices really, really low. And if you do believe in the modeling, which I do, by the way, I'm going to be on Matt Glance's podcast tomorrow at 7, I want to say, on YouTube. 90% chance to win. The fact that you can still get Biden on MyBookie at 170, if you know about American odds, minus 170, it's a 43% EV, meaning for every $100 you're winning 43. I don't care what the result is. People are like, polling sucks. I don't believe polling, blah, 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 data. And it's just First of all, the polls weren't wrong in 2016. They were within a polling era, and this election is much, much different than what it was in 2016. Biden is way, way more of a favorite and way more out in front. I don't care about the politics of it. This is why this market is so lucrative, because everybody gets so emotional about it, you know. But anyways, just lastly on this, I wanted to show you, where the hell is my market thing? This isn't even complete, but all right, over here, I've got 189,277. That is not up to date because I made a couple other bets last night on the national 8250 at 165 with somebody I know. So I've probably got about 200,000 down. Now, what I will say is that a lot of this is not in play because I got a lot of long lays. And what I mean by long lays is that I got a lot of really, really good lines on favorites that are just absolutely a lot. It was too good for me to pass up. Like I've got California, Massachusetts, Maryland, New Jersey, Rhode Island, all at like minus 1,400. In Virginia, which is like, these are all like 99.999% for Biden. So 53,000 of this is not in play. Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, barely in play. Biden's going to win all those states too. Like he's got like a 9-point lead. So I'd say half of my money is not even in play here. I've got pretty much like 90K at risk. It's actually less than that, 80K, no, 70K, because this will return this. And my huge, huge positions are on Florida, Ohio. And again, it's not that, you know, the reason why I bet Florida and Ohio and Biden is because I was getting like plus 140, plus 150, and it's a toss-up. It's a huge, huge EV. 43% on the national, sort of averaged out. So my EV return on this, which doesn't include my other bets, so I've put up 189 to win 166 and calculated my weighted EV as 52,144 on average. Weighted EV of 31%, just by making the bet, if you believe in the modeling, which I do. I'd actually taken some of the long lays out of here, so it's not a total of 31% total. So 125 hours, $52,000 in EV. I don't mind it. I think I put a lot of money into reputable offshore sites too. I'm hoping no funny business goes on with like payouts and things. But it's a big day for me. It is definitely a big day for me tomorrow. I also put some money down on, and I wrote some formulas on PI, which is Predict It. Predict It's a little bit more complicated because they take a vig, but you can get money in and out on Predict It via credit card. So if you wanted to do this and you're like, oh, and you don't even have to convert the line because Predict It will give you a price. So you'd be like 538 says Ohio's 50-50 and I can buy Ohio on Predict It on Biden at 40 cents. Then that's about 20% EV minus the VIG, basically, if you wanted to get in on, you know, on some money, things like that. So, yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see next week when you guys come back how we'll do. But, you know, I am a professional gambler. I think that this is a good spot. It's got nothing to do. I think it's ridiculous that people say, well, the polling means nothing. The polling's wrong. It's always wrong, as opposed to nothing. You know, if a state, if polling averages have up Florida up by like 2 or 3%, and it's within a polling error, which I understand that's within a polling error, it still means that Biden is gonna be favored though across like 10 different polls if he's up by 2 or 3%. You know, so anyways, that's my spiel on that. Let's go to our last caller here. Oh, this might be a non-hand call here too. I haven't even looked in the chat I'm sure I'm getting flamed by some people, the Trump, even though I said it's got nothing to do with politics with me, but I'm sure that some people are saying this too. 406, this is, by the way, I have a couple of bets on Montana, which is a sleep horse. Are you in Billings, Montana, sir?
I am.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's going to be competitive down here.
Yeah,
We got a Senate 3 and a few others.
So check this out. Montana, I have at plus 1,000 on a couple bets, and a couple of the pollings. Here's Montana, which was actually the biggest one. I want to say moneyline 1,000, 65% EV. Sure, Trump is probably going to win Montana, but 538 gave Biden about 15% chance to win. So if someone's giving you 10-1 at a 15% chance, if you're a gambler, you want to take that EV. So, yeah. Anyways, you got a story for us or a hand or what?
It's not even a hand. It's more of a story.
Okay.
It was basically, local 1-2 no limit game.
Uh-huh.
Not too bad. It's more of a bar game. It's always fun, always a good time. I've been there numerous times. The staff there is great. I have nothing bad to say about them. But I had the darndest thing happen where, played for a little bit, rebought, came back in, and luckily the floor guy, he got my cash. And here's where the plot kind of thickens a little bit. It gets interesting. I used the restroom for about 2 minutes. I come back, all my money's gone.
So you're saying that so this isn't like a little card club in Montana or something?
Yeah.
So actually, when I was in Montana, I was in a town called Ennis, where's Montana State?
Mm-hmm.
Where's Montana State?
Montana State is in Bozeman.
Bozeman,
if you
right.
ever go down there, hit up the Cat's Paw. Really good game.
Right. So what is Ennis, like an hour away from Bozeman or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was in Ennis and there were like bars that had like legit like poker tables where you could play for money, right? You deal your own or some shit like that?
Yeah, it's cowboy poker down there sometimes. The only thing we got up here is like 1-2 no limit, but we'll have some games where we'll play like 2-5 just because, you get some people a little crazy. It's always a good time though. So
do you guys, do you deal your own, or are there floor men and stuff and dealers?
Yeah, they got a dealer, they got the floor guy, but he deals too.
Okay, so the floor guy deals
too.
It's
just a small room though, but it's
always
a good time.
So you're playing in this game and there's only one table going or a couple tables going?
There's only one table going and we got about X amount of people, but it's funny. And I already knew where my money went. It went to the drunk guy who was sitting to my left.
So you're saying that you went to the bathroom and you came back and someone had taken your chips, or somebody was playing on top of your chips?
They took my chips. The way I position my chips is I will just have it a little bit to the left of me. That way, if I'm checking out my cards or something, they can't see it. But yeah, it was 2 stacks of a red and then just a couple of green chips, maybe like $2.75, nothing too bad.
Okay.
But I say, where's my money? And then the dealer, and then it gets the awkward little silence. I already know the drunk guy took it. And by the way, I don't think he maliciously took it. I just think it was probably a little crazy.
So, but he's playing at the table, right?
Correct.
So you think he might have palmed it by mistake or something like that?
Exactly. I don't think he had any malicious intentions. I just think he was probably drunk or wasted.
So how did you broach the situation?
Tried to do it as diplomatically as possible, of course, as our fellow DJ and poker players know. But at the end of the day, I just let the dealer know right off the bat. I said, hey, I had about $2.75 here. It just got taken. So we need to address this right now. You get on the camera. We call the floor. Let's get this resolved.
Uh-huh.
Because they were saying, they're like, oh, yeah, he must have taken it. One of the other players was saying along the lines of, because all the guy basically had was green chips, just $25, maybe 800 or something. He had a couple of stacks of red. So, I mean, anybody with a brain could figure that out, what happened. So we called the floor. It got resolved. But at the end of the day, I did have to cause some shit just to get resolved. Luckily, it finally did. However, drunk man only wanted to give me 200. I had choice words with him. So we got it resolved. It was a gentleman's agreement.
So he only wanted to give you 200, and then what did you tell the rest of the room, basically?
I said, absolutely, hell no. I had about 275 here. That's not going to happen.
Uh-huh.
We need to make this right, get this resolved. So the floor guy, he gets there. I said, hey, man, check out the camera if you want to. Here's what I had. He didn't check it out, but he just let us settle it amongst each other, which I took 275. However, the floor was pretty cool because he gave me like at least 10 or 15 bucks extra, just to cover if anything went wrong or anything. But it was just interesting, and I just recommend to anybody at the table, always protect your chips, even if you're gone.
Well, so
it's unfortunate the dealer didn't catch it, but that's okay, I guess.
So it kind of seems like this is more of a little bit of I would say less formal than, not that card rooms are formal in California, but
For sure.
a little bit less formal. It's just a one table going and the guy's drunk. But
Oh yeah.
part of the reason why I wanted to
Everybody knows each other.
Right. Part of the reason why I want to go over this, though, too, because I think a lot of these viewers don't understand this, is that, it's obvious what happened in your case, but,
Right.
and I've seen this before. And I was actually at the World Series of Poker sitting next to, this is part of the reason why large PLO games don't go on at the World Series of Poker. This might have been actually almost 10 years ago. I've seen it before in California, not to this extent, but then I saw it at the World Series. And if anybody's been to the World Series many, many years, this was when they used to do the bracelet ceremony on the stage in the pavilion. If anybody remembers when DraftKings had their thing 4 or 5 years ago, this was before that. They would do the bracelet ceremony at DraftKings in pavilion. And this guy, this Euro guy, he was playing a big PLO game. It was 25, 50, 100, right? And he had $70,000 in chips, big chips and stuff that he left on the table. Okay. And he walked over to the stage because his buddy had won a bracelet, right? Somebody random came over to the table, said to the table, hey, I'm whatever's friends. He told me to pick up his chips, took the chips and walked off with them. 70 grand. I saw Vice come in and I saw the Vegas police come in. And they will not make good on that. I've also seen it to a lesser extent in California where someone has just basically went over and took 500 chips. So if the guy went to the bathroom, guy came over, took a bunch of yellow chips, which are the $5 chips in LA, like a rack, and then left, right? And you would think you'd be
right. I've heard about that. It's crazy.
Right.
Because you'll have it on. I was even reading the Reddit forums, and I was like, what the hell? It's I came out okay. I knew the people. It was fine. But
sure.
Some places, they'll just steal it from you and never come back, and you're screwed.
Well, and people are like, well, how does the casino not make good on that? And it's the reason why they can't make good on that is because you could run a scam, right? You could run a scam on the casino. It's kind of almost and it actually makes sense from the casino's perspective. I didn't really thought it through. It's almost like why you wouldn't want to pay a ransom to someone, right? We don't negotiate with terrorists because it sets a precedent. It's kind of the same thing here is just if you do that and then, someone could just be like, oh, this guy stole this money and, what are they going to do? Pay it out. But from everywhere, my understanding for all you people that might not necessarily be accustomed to live poker, the fact that your chips are on the table, somebody can come and take them. So that's why you'll see people take their large chips off of the table. Now, I'm not going to fucking deal with taking stacks of $5 chips off the table. I'm just not, I'm not going to walk away with a couple $100 each time I go to the bathroom. Right.
Exactly.
But if I had 5 case or 1 case.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Cash. A lot of people don't play with cash anymore on the table, but be careful out there. The fact that your chips are on the table does not mean that someone can't come along and steal them.
I know that's the first time it's ever happened to me. Luckily it all worked out. Initially it wasn't cool, but luckily I had a good floor and dealer, so they took care of it. But I just wanted to kind of call in just because I'm sure people have this happen to them all the time.
Well, I don't know about all the time, but I think some people aren't aware that
it's
your chips are sort of, I think what it's assumed that, but especially on a busy night, but it's kind of assumed that other players at the table wouldn't allow somebody to come up and take your chips, right? But you can see that, if you're playing in a busy room, like on a Friday night at Commerce or something like that, where there's 10 tables going and people are moving in and out, they might not be paying attention to it. But anyways, I appreciate the call. Thank you very much. I'm glad you got
for having me. Appreciate the CLP mask. Thank you.
Oh, you're one of those guys. Cool. Well, maybe I'll get up to Montana for some fly fishing again sometime in my life.
You should.
Yeah.
Enjoy it, man.
All right.
How you do on the election? We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. All right. Take it easy. Right. Bye-bye.
Later.
All right, guys. So that's going to wrap it up for us. So head over to TCH Live if you want to watch some cash game action. 5-5 match stack. Tell them Bart sent you. And then again, next week I'll be commentating on TCH Live. So this show will be at 3 p.m., I want to say-ish, Eastern time. Either 3 or 4 Eastern, maybe actually 4 Eastern, but look at the events, right? Look at the events that come up on the YouTube channel, and I'll actually put this episode up. so everybody can watch it on the live replay after the fact. But normally I put it up unlisted, so you have to grab the link or subscribe to the podcast for to listen to it in a podcast format. So I've got about an hour left until my new adopted team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, play. Tom Brady and Gronkowski, because I don't know if I'm going to be watching the Patriots the rest of the year. But anyways, guys, thanks for keeping it real. Thanks for being the show. Head over to CCH Live. We'll see you next week. Take it easy.